In this Warmaster battle report, Chaos take on the Orcs in a true clash of evil. Both players will be using 2,000 point armies. This battle will take place in an uninhabited river valley, so we set up our board to represent a river crossing far to the north of the old world. Both armies will be fighting for possession of the ford, which dominates the centre of the board. The game will be played for 6 turns or until one army is forced to withdraw, and whoever ends the game with their troops in contact with the ford and no enemy within 5 centimeters of the ford will claim a bonus 500 victory points. The battlefield features 3 hills which are open terrain for all units and grant infantry and artillery defended status. There are 3 woods which can only be entered by infantry and grant them defended status. They are also dense terrain. The river is impassable to artillery and chariots, and any other unit type which moves into, out of or across the river suffers a -1 command penalty. The ford in the middle of the river can be crossed by all unit types and doesn't impose the command penalty. There are 2 marshes which can only be entered by infantry and count as dense terrain. And finally there are a number of impassable rock formations. The battlefield is 180 centimeters long by 120 centimeters wide, and both armies will deploy along the long edges of the battlefield. So let us now see the forces which will be fighting this battle. The first army are 2,000 points of Orcs. This Orc horde features 5 units of Orc warriors, 5 units of Goblins, 2 Trolls and 1 unit of Ogres. For cavalry there are 4 Boar Riders and 2 Wolf Riders. There are 2 Rock Lobber artillery pieces, an Orc General with the Orb of Majesty, 2 Orc Heroes, 1 mounted on a Wyvern, 2 Orc Shaman and 2 Goblin Shaman. The breakpoint is 11. The next army are the Forces of Chaos. This Chaos army features 2 units of Warriors and 2 units of Marauders. For cavalry there are 4 units of Chaos Knights, 3 units of Chaos Hounds and a unit of Chariots. There's a unit of Harpies for flyers and 2 Chaos Spawn to accompany the Infantry Brigade. For characters there is a General, a Hero with the Sword of Fate and a Sorcerer. Breakpoint is 8. The Orcs begin by placing their Wolf Rider Scout Brigade on one side of the river. Meanwhile the Wyvern Rider deploys behind a hill on the opposite side. The Chaos Horde gathers its might opposite the ford. Meanwhile a flanking force of 3 Chaos Hounds deploys on the far side of the river. They are brigaded with a unit of Chaos Chariots. They will be led by the Chaos Hero armed with the Sword of Fate. Nearer to the ford is the main Chaos host. A single unit of Harpies lurks at the rear, whilst riding alongside them is the strike force of 4 Chaos Knights. The Infantry Brigade is composed of 2 units of Chaos Warriors, supported by 2 units of Marauders. Protecting the Infantry Brigade's flanks are 2 units of Chaos Spawn. The Chaos General leads from the front, whilst the accompanying Sorcerer takes up the rear guard. Breakpoint is 8. The Orc Horde gathers. On the right flank is a brigade of 4 Orc Boar Boys. They are led by the Orc General Smakka Zulu and accompanied by a Shaman. Setting up behind the hill is an infantry brigade of 2 Trolls supported by 2 Orc Warriors. Behind them is another infantry brigade of 1 Ogres and 3 Orc Warriors. Adjacent to the river is the artillery brigade of 2 Rock Lobbers and 2 Goblins supporting them. They are led by 2 Shaman. Across the river, 3 goblins deploy alongside the Wolf Riders, and they're accompanied by an Orc hero and the last shaman. The Orc breakpoint is 11. With both armies fully deployed, the stage is now set for the violence to begin.
We have raised altars in this land, so that we may sacrifice you to our gods.
Eyes too big to be beat! Orcs is meant for fighting and winning!
The Chaos Army moves first, with the Hounds and Chariot Brigade advancing up the left flank adjacent to the river. Seeing the threat posed by the Boar Boys opposite them, the hero then orders the Hounds to cross the river and take refuge by the marsh. Meanwhile, the main force's first action is to order the Harpies behind nearby woods. The general then orders the main infantry brigade forwards, but with the roll of double 6 the order fails. With the Chaos forces off to a somewhat shaky start, can the Orcs seize the initiative and punish their foes for their lack of progress? The Orcs begin by ordering their Wolf Riders forwards to take the open ground between the rock formation and the hill. Meanwhile, the Goblin Brigade takes refuge in the woods.
We'll go all sneaky-like.
The Orc infantry and artillery brigades are ordered forwards, while the brigade of Boar Boys thunders towards the Chaos Chariots on the hill. With a string of 3 successful orders, Smakka Zulu orders the Boar Boys to charge, and they are quickly joined by the Orc hero Cruncher on his wyvern, Muncher.
Stinking chaos, boys! We'll clobber 'em good!
The Orcs have definitely taken the initiative and look set to sweep the chaos from their side of the river. The artillery takes aim and shoots at the nearest chaos target, but as this is a chaos spawn, the beast easily shrugs off the raining boulders. In combat, in their excitement to get to grips with the enemy, the Boar Boys fumble their attacks somewhat, whilst the Chaos make a good account of themselves. The Orcs win combat by a single point, and this is enough to pursue the retreating chariots and destroy them. But in doing so, the Orcs lose a stand of Boar Boys themselves. The victorious Boar Boys then reposition after combat to keep the Hounds within charge distance. And at the end of the turn, the Orcs are off to a good start with the Chaos on the back foot. Chaos turn 2 begins with the Harpies homing back towards a character. The Chaos hero orders the Hounds to move away from the looming Boar Boys, but the order fails, so the Hounds are stuck with a half-pace move which leaves their flank exposed. The Chaos Sorcerer manages to order the Infantry Brigade and their accompanying spawns forwards towards the ford, whilst the General successfully orders the Harpies to fly to the rear of the Orc lines and start threatening their artillery. The Cavalry Brigade is then ordered forwards by the General to threaten the Wolf Riders that are approaching their flank.
We see the Orcs! Tame the green ones. Rend the flesh from their bones.
In the shooting phase, the Chaos Sorcerer attempts to cast Anger of the Gods, but fails. The Wolf Riders begin turn 2 by using their initiative to evade away from the encroaching Chaos Knights. A unit of Boar Riders is then ordered to charge across the river and into the flank of the Chaos Hounds. The remaining Boar Riders are then ordered up behind them but get stuck crossing the river. Smakka Zulu then shows off his tactical genius by ordering a unit of goblins to turn around and charge the Harpies to their rear.
Let's get him!
He then successfully orders a second unit of goblins to move up in support.
On our way!
Meanwhile, the main infantry brigades continue to move forwards, with the trolls dipping their toes in the ford. The Orc characters then reposition around the battlefield, with 2 shamans sneaking forwards ready to cast spells. In the shooting phase, a unit of goblins fighting the Harpies is empowered by the Spirit of the War, whilst the rock lobbers take aim at their targets. The spawn and a unit of warriors is struck this turn, and the drive back is sufficient to confuse the warriors. The shaman on the hill managed to unleash a gaze of Mork through the line of Chaos Knights. The drive back breaks up the brigade but doesn't confuse any units. In combat, the charging boar boys easily kill off the Chaos Hounds for no losses. They then advance into the flank of a second unit of hounds and easily destroy them as well, again for no losses.
Chew 'em up and spit 'em out.
The victorious boar boys then fall back in good order and join up with their brigade crossing the river. In close combat, the goblins, empowered by their spell, easily defeat the harpies, killing one stand. The harpies retreat and cannot be pursued by the goblins, so the victorious goblins fall back in good order, with one unit turning back around to cover the rear of the artillery. With the orcs snatching an early lead, can the chaos recover from this lethal first blow? The Chaos Army responds by moving the remaining hounds out of harm's way. The infantry brigade is then ordered towards the ford to challenge the boar boys, whilst a brigade of 3 Chaos Knights moves up ready to charge.
We see the target!
With a successful order given, one unit of Chaos Knights thunders across the ford and charges the Orc artillery. Their intention is to sweep away the artillery and then charge the goblins behind. The remaining 2 units of knights ignore the ford and instead chase down the Orc cavalry which is stuck crossing the river.
Attack! Attack!
If the knights can push the Orcs back across the river, they may just turn the tide. Meanwhile, on the Chaos right flank, the Chaos General orders the remaining unit of Chaos Knights to engage the Wolf Riders. The Wolf Riders do stand and shoot but can't penetrate the Knights' thick armour. In combat, the Wolf Riders take heavy losses while the Knights shrug off the blows of their opponents. The Knights pursue their enemy and destroy them before advancing into the flank of the Goblin Archers. Despite being defended, the Goblins still lose a stand to the Chaos Knights, who suffer no casualties in return. The Goblins then retreat further into the wood, and unable to follow them, the Knights fall back in good order. Across the river, the Knights of Tzeentch easily take out the Orc artillery for no loss. They advance into the waiting goblins and ride them down in similar fashion, for no significant damage. The Chaos Knights then reposition to threaten the flanks of the Orc infantry. The cavalry battle in the river sees the Chaos Knights inflict sufficient casualties on the Orcs to win the first round of combat. The Orcs retreat and are pursued by their Chaos Knights, who lap round their flanks. The result is that one unit of boar boys is completely destroyed for the loss of a single Chaos Knight stand. The Knights of Khorne continue their pursuit while the Knights of Slaanesh fall back. The charge of the Chaos Knights has certainly inflicted heavy casualties on the Orcs this turn, but now that the Chaos Cavalry contingent is split up and isolated, can the Orcs take advantage and counter-strike? With no artillery left and with Chaos Knights rampaging around their flanks, the Orc General decides to commit to the charge. The 2 unengaged units of boar boys use their initiative to charge the Chaos Knights. The tricksy Wolf Riders use their initiative to evade away from the Chaos Knights across the river, and the Goblins skulk deeper into the woods, safe from harm. The Trolls attempt to charge across the river into the flank of the Chaos Knights, but the order fails. Meanwhile, the infantry on the hill behind turns to face the Chaos Knights. Orc characters move forwards, with the Shaman readying their spells. The gaze of Mork plus shots from the Wolf Riders fail to impress the Knights of Tzeentch.
Keep trying, little one.
At the rear of the Orc lines, the Goblins charge the Harpies, but the combat ends in a stalemate with both sides losing one stand. Both units then fall back in good order to advantageous positions. The Orc boar boys locked in combat with the Chaos Knights in the river are joined by the Wyvern Rider, and this tips the fight in their favour. Over 2 rounds of combat, the Knights of Khorne are brought down by the charging boar boys. The victorious boar boys then advance into the Knights of Slaanesh, joining that battle. Once again, the terror-causing Wyvern proves pivotal and the Boar Boys are victorious. The combat phase ends with a single stand of Chaos Knights remaining, although the Boar Boys have suffered heavy casualties themselves. 2 units of Boar Boys fall back in good order, leaving a single unit fighting the Chaos Knights. Chaos turn 4 sees the Harpies use their initiative to charge the flank of the Goblin archers. The Goblins, however, can stand and shoot, and they inflict 2 hits on the Harpies as they charge home. A unit of Chaos Warriors uses its initiative to charge the flank of the Boar Boys fighting the Chaos Knights. A unit of Marauders is also dragged forwards in support. The Chaos Knights of Nurgle are ordered back towards the ford, whilst the remaining infantry plus the 2 spawn are pushed back together to form a brigade of sorts. The Knights of Tzeentch are unwilling to charge the Ogres who are defended on the hill, so instead are ordered towards their flank. The Chaos characters then reposition around their units, but the Sorcerer is still unable to cast a spell. In combat, the Boar Boys finish off the Knights of Slaanesh before they themselves are cut down by the Warriors of Khorne. The Chaos Warriors then make an advance move into a second unit of Boar Boys. The Boar Boys cannot penetrate the Warriors' thick armour and are cut down in the first round.
Blood for the Blood God!
The Warriors then fall back in good order and take up a defended position within the marsh. Elsewhere, the Harpies manage to kill off a stand of Goblins, but in the pursuit the Goblins fight back hard and the combat ends in a draw. Both sides then fall back in good order, with the Harpies protecting the flank of the Chaos Knights. At the start of Orc turn 4, the Ogres can scent human flesh beneath the thick armour of the Knights and have to charge them. They bring some Orc warriors as backup. The Wolf Riders join in the fray and charge the Harpies. Elsewhere, the Trolls stick to their side of the river, as the banks will grant them defended status. The remaining Orc brigade is then ordered towards the flank of the Chaos Knights, and with a successful second order, they charge in.
Time to get stuck in, boys!
Meanwhile, the surviving Goblin stand flees across the river out of harm's way.
We're not going anyplace scary, are we?
Across the field, the Orcs withdraw their wounded units and engage the enemy with their reserves. Cruncher and Muncher fly across the battlefield and join the Orcs fighting the Chaos Knights. And in the shooting phase, the sneaky Goblin Shaman continues zapping the Chaos units with the Gaze of Mork. A unit of Chaos Hounds loses a stand, whilst both they and a unit of Chaos Warriors are confused. In combat, the Wolf Riders take down the Harpies for no loss, and advance into the Chaos Knights. Attacked on 3 sides, the Knights fail to make an impact against the Ogres and lose 2 stands. They retreat towards the board edge, but are pursued by the flanking units and cut down. The Orcs then fall back in good order and start heading back towards the ford. With the Chaos Army now almost at breakpoint, they attempt a flanking manoeuvre with the Knights of Nurgle across the ford, but this fails. A string of orders to push the infantry up towards the ford also fail, and the Chaos Army is left on the back foot. The Sorcerer, however, does manage to cast his Anger of the Gods spell. In Orc turn 5, the Ogres find that they are just within charge range of a single stand of Knights of Nurgle, so have to charge them using their initiative. The Ogres are joined by a unit of Orcs in support and the Wyvern Rider. The Trolls still refuse to cross the ford, hampered by the Chaos Sorcerer's spell, and unwilling to give up their defended position. The tricksy Goblin Shaman continue their assault on the Chaos backlines, zapping another stand of Chaos Hounds into oblivion. As the Orcs cheer from their side of the river, the Hounds are driven back into the Marauders and confused. In combat, the Ogres fail to bring down a stand of Knights, but win due to their supporting infantry. The Knights retreat, and unable to pursue them, the Ogres consolidate their position on their side of the river. As both armies enter their final turn, Can the Chaos Forces claim the ford in one last push, or will the Orcs break them in the process? The Knights of Nurgle commit themselves to one last glorious charge and thunder into the Trolls. The remaining infantry is also ordered to charge the Trolls, but this order fails, leaving them on their side of the river. The Chaos Sorcerer fails to instill Frenzy of Chaos into the Knights, so instead the Chaos Hero joins the fray using his Sword of Fate. In shooting, the Chaos Spawn find that they are within range of the Trolls and manage to confuse the dim-witted brutes. The charging Knights inflict 4 hits on the defended Trolls, killing off a stand before they can regenerate. And while the Trolls can only manage a single hit on the Knights, thanks to their support, the combat is a draw. The Knights pull back into the ford and prepare to defend themselves from the Orc countercharge. Using their initiative, the Trolls charge the front of the Knights whilst the Ogres charge the flank. Cackling in vengeance, the remaining Wolf Riders now sweep past the Chaos lines and attack the Hounds. Goblin Shamans sling their spells and the Wolf Riders are empowered with the War. The Orc Wyvern Rider joins the Ogres attacking the flank of the Chaos Knights, but the Chaos Forces fight hard and kill off the remaining Trolls. However, not even Chaos Armour can stand up to the combined attacks of Trolls, Ogres and a Wyvern, and the Knights lose 2 stands. This is enough to bring the Chaos Army to its breakpoint, and they have to surrender the ford to the Orcs. Neither army was in sole possession of the ford at the end of the game, so the 500 victory point bonus is not earned. The Orcs did well to pick upon the soft Chaos targets wherever possible, striking an early blow and removing 3 Chaos units for no losses. However, you cannot underestimate the power of the Chaos melee units, and their Knights certainly swung the battle back into their favour. But the Orc tactics exemplified quantity over quality. A small elite army can be absorbed and overwhelmed by greater numbers. So, as the Chaos Forces retreat northwards away from the river, the valley rings out to the tribal war drums of Smakka Zulu.
Orcs is the biggest and the strongest. Eyes too big to be beat. Orcs is meant for fighting and winning.